Hello, my name is Mara, and welcome to Books Like Whoa. Okay guys, it's time to do my classics TBR again. I feel like, so last year I did 12 classics I want to read in 2019. This year I'm doing 12 classics I want to read in 2020. And I think last year I learned a lot about how to effectively set a TBR. And I think it was a very effective project because I did end up meeting my goal, which is to read at least 6 books from that 12 that I pick in the year. And I think having that list kind of thought through ahead of time was really helpful to me. I am a mood reader, but having challenges and TBRs helps me focus my mood reading on a day-to-day basis. And I think I just learned a lot about myself as a reader from that entire project. So it was effective because I at least read and then DNF'd 7 books from the 12 last year. So I'm rolling forward 5 of the ones that I didn't get to, and then I'm adding a few more. I've also solidified this year kind of my definition of what I'm considering to be a traditional classic versus a modern classic. I have arbitrarily picked the date of 1950 and earlier as a traditional classic for 2 reasons. One, I think that roughly encompasses both of the world wars as well as the interwar period and kind of the settling out of World War II. And also I just sort of picked, my dad was born in 1951. So I said, you know what, anything older than my dad we'll call a traditional classic in terms of like outside of the living memory of my immediate family. We'll call that a traditional classic. So it's very arbitrary. I know some people pick World War I as sort of the cutoff for traditional versus like more modern classics, which I think also makes some sense. Anyway, that's just for my purposes. I'm picking 1950 as my cutoff. So I've got that more firmed up. And I think I also learned from last year kind of what I want to do in terms of how many books outside of that core list I want to pick. And the answer is very few. So I've got a more focused list, a list that I am very excited about. So I would really love to actually get to all 12 of these this year, plus my additional reread. I would love to hit them all. So I am feeling pumped going into this list this year. I feel good in terms of like having refined my process a little bit. And I am hopeful that even if I don't get to all of these, that I'm gonna get to a lot of them. Because like I said, I'm really excited and I have like energy for this year. Let's do this. So let's just dive on into the list. So we are going to start with the core 12 that I'm trying to get to. And I am again going to set the metric of my goal is to read at least 6 of these this year, even though all of these are really exciting to me and I would love it if I could get to more, even all 12, but just knowing how the year goes, I don't know that that's totally realistic. So I'm giving myself variety so that I can mood read from a list I'm very pumped about. So the first of the 12 is The Mysteries of Udolpho by Anne Radcliffe. Now I picked this one because I actually feel a little shamefaced that I've not gotten to this yet. So this is one of the kind of texts of the romance genre and specifically sort of the Gothic tradition. I read Northanger Abbey in 2019 and that was sort of a pastiche or a send-up of books like this. Like this is a book that explicitly gets referenced in Northanger Abbey. And it's often referenced throughout sort of the more like academic or literary studies that exist of the romance genre. And it's one that I have not yet read. And I have a project that I'm hoping I'm gonna work on this year that this would be helpful for. So I really just wanna dive into this. This is a classic Gothic romance. I believe it was written in 1794. It's actually quite a bit chunkier than I thought it might be. So this may be a candidate of one that I might do a read along kind of thing for, because I think that might help me get through it, having people to talk about it with. So stay tuned for that. But anyway, I am excited to get to this one. This is one of the ones that, because I'm somebody who's always very interested in the history of genres, this really appeals to me. And then next, speaking of classic Gothic romances, now, Shirley I don't think is necessarily exactly that, but Charlotte Bronte wrote my all-time favorite book, which is Jane Eyre, which is definitely a foundational text of sort of that Gothic tradition, solidifying some of the tropes. And Charlotte Bronte didn't write a lot of books. I've read 2 of them so far. I've read Jane Eyre and I've read Villette. I keep meaning to read another one from her just to see how I'll do. I'm not thinking that this is gonna be like one of my all-time favorites at this point. I think that probably would be unlikely, but I just want to read another book from her. So Shirley was on my list last year. I didn't end up getting to it, so I really do hope that I will be able to get to it this year because, like I said, Charlotte Bronte wrote my all-time favorite book, and I also really liked Villette. It's not an all-time favorite. I'd probably give it like 4 stars, but it's one that I really enjoyed, so I know that Charlotte Bronte is not just like a one-trick pony or a one-hit wonder for me, so I expect that I will at least enjoy this, even if it doesn't end up becoming like an all-time favorite. Okay, and then next we have sort of like a viewer's choice pick because last year I put The Mayor of Casterbridge on my TBR, and I sort of said like, hey, you know, I'm putting The Mayor of Casterbridge on, maybe I'll do Far from the Madding Crowd. I'm basically just wanting to try another Thomas Hardy because I did read Tess of the D'Urbervilles either in my late teens or early 20s. Wasn't that wild about it, but I'd like to give him another chance, especially because Penguin Clothbound Classics seems to have such like a hard on for him. Like they just keep putting out more and more editions from him. So I'd like to try again and like see if I can like him better basically. And the overwhelming consensus in the comments was like, girl, if you're trying to like him, go with Far from the Madding Crowd over The Mayor of Casterbridge. Like this is the right one to read next. This is definitely the viewer's choice in terms of the consensus is this is the right Thomas Hardy to start with in my re-examining of him. So we'll see if this one ends up making the cut. This is one that I don't know. It's like, I'm not specifically excited for this book because I kind of have a mixed experience with Thomas Hardy from the past, but like intellectually, I would like to try him again. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, I'm excited in the sense of, I'm curious to see how I'm gonna do with him this time around, but this specific book isn't getting to me as much. So I don't know. I may have to like make it a priority to actually get to this because I'm not sure I'll be self-motivated to do it. And then another one that I didn't quite get to last year, but was on my TBR is North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. In 2018, I read Cranford and very much enjoyed it. I would also very much like to watch the adaptation from the BBC because I've heard it is just excellent. And the way this novel is always described as is Pride and Prejudice, but like a little later on in the 19th century and in the north of England. So I'm expecting, I know I like Elizabeth Gaskell. I like that description of a plot. So like, I think I'll really enjoy this. Again, I just sort of need to make some time to get to it. But this is one that I'm more actively excited for the book itself. So I don't know that I'm going to need like motivation to get through it. And then next we have Mansfield Park by Jane Austen. Now this is one that I think is one of the less likely ones that I will get to this year, not because I'm not excited about it. This is one that I'm actually most excited to get to because I love Jane Austen. This is the only of her full works left that I have to read. So I'm excited to do that, but I have historically tried to like space out her books quite a bit so that I can like savor the little bit of her oeuvre that we have to read. And I read Northanger Abbey last year, so this is actually following pretty quickly on that. And for that reason, I'm not sure I'm going to make it a super high priority to get to it because I'm always cool with the idea of like spacing out my Jane Austen. But like I said, it's the last of her books I have left to read. I adore Jane Austen. I've not read a book from her I didn't like. Northanger Abbey was my least favorite so far, but it was still 4 stars and I still like really had a good time reading it. So I'm excited for this. But like I said, because just of my overall sort of attempt to draw this out, probably one of the ones that I'm least likely to get to out of these 12, you know, it may have to be like, I'm having a real hard time in life and it's like, you know what, it's just time for some Jane Austen for this to get prioritized. And then next we have Maurice by EM Forster. Now I am aware that the British pronunciation of this name is Morris, and I just can't do that. To me, this is Maurice, and we're just gonna have to be okay with my vulgar American pronunciation. Though, to be fair, I think isn't that Maurice is the French pronunciation? I don't know. Anyway, I read Howard's End last year. It was probably my favorite classic that I read last year. I very much enjoyed it, and I loved thematically what was happening in that book, as well as the specific sort of plot and character elements. And I just love that it felt like such a prescient book in terms of our times now, even though it's more than 100 years old. And so it made me excited to keep going with him. And Maurice, I believe, from my understanding, it was published, I think, posthumously because it was a gay love story. EM Forster was a queer man, and I think basically didn't really want to risk trying to publish this during his lifetime, if I'm remembering rightly, or it was published like later in his life. I forget exactly the details, but basically this was too scandalous to print at the time of its writing. So I'm really excited to dive into more of him and then to get to a classic that has, you know, a little more representation in it than we often get in classics. So I'm pumped to get to this one. I think that it'll be really great. And I also love this edition because I think these are meant to be trees, but they just look like broccoli to me. And I kind of love that I have a fancy broccoli book. And then next we have Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. So this is one that is coming into the list not as a modern classic, but as a classic, because I believe it was written in the 30s. So now by my firmed up definition of a classic, this one would definitely qualify. And Zora Neale Hurston is somewhat, so I've always heard about this book and obviously heard great things about it. It is a classic, but I didn't really know much about her until in 2018 I read Stamped from the Beginning, and I think a couple of other books I read referenced her as well. But she was also a really interesting public thinker, I guess, especially around issues of race in the US. And just reading about her activism and kind of philosophy, I guess, or at least popular philosophy, really intrigued me even more to get to this one. So I'm excited to bring it onto the main list and to try to make it a priority to read. I may try to read this during Black History Month, which is in February. And it's not a super big book, not going to be super hard to get through. Also, this is a Verrego modern classic, and isn't this edition just beautiful? You can see all the shiny. But yeah, so I'm excited to bring this onto the main list and very intrigued to get to know her a little bit more in her own words. Okay, and then next we have kind of a cheat because it's really two books, but I'm officially just putting one on here. So I'm putting The Warden by Anthony Trollope on here. And the reason I'm quasi putting both of these books in is because this is the first in a series in his Barchestershire or Barchester Towers series. I forget what it's called. But this is the first book in it, and I have been told that this is really it's not that long, and it's sort of just like a prologue or a ramp up to the meat of the series, which really starts in book 2 with Barchester Towers. So I've been told that if I like this at all, I should just keep on going to this one, and this will tell me if I actually really like this series. So I am putting this one officially on the list, but assuming that I am at all intrigued by it, I think I will also try to at least get started on this one this year. So sort of a twofer, but if nothing else, this is one I definitely I'm very invested in at least reading this one this year so that I can get to the real one. So maybe what will happen is I end up reading this year and this in 2021, but we'll see. Okay, and then the last of the physical books I have to show you for this main list is The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by EM Bronte. So I am so sad that I didn't get to this in 2019. I really, really would like to try. Anne Bronte, because I've read from Emily, I've read from Charlotte, I've not yet read from Anne, which feels like a gross oversight on my part. So I think I will enjoy this. I saw there's a lot of heated debate about if you should start with The Tenant of Wildfell Hall or Agnes Grey. It seemed like more people in my comments were saying The Tenant of Wildfell Hall than Agnes Grey. So this is the one I'm going to start with. That is decided. And yeah, this one, again, is definitely a high priority to get to in 2019, as are so many of these, but I really do I want to give her a try and have an experience with her. Okay, so then the two that I don't have in physical form to show you. First is my nonfiction classics pick, which I'm very excited about. It is going to be a project because I've got this on audio and I think it is like a 40-hour audiobook, so it will be a commitment, it will be a journey. But I have picked Black Reconstruction in America, 1860 to 1880 by W.E.B. Dubois. This is a book that has just come up so much in the last few years in my other reading. And like I said, it is a classic nonfiction account of Black Reconstruction in America. And that is a time, so it's been very interesting, I think, especially just given the current administration and sort of revisiting a lot of questions about race and the history of racial politics in America and, this kind of progressive narrative that we have and how real that is, etc. So many people have harkened back to this book and talking about W.E.B. Du Bois's insights into what this specific time period in American history looked like when we did have a period where newly freed enslaved people were really in control, in power in certain parts of the country, and just how the dynamics of all of that played out and how ultimately that was used to incite white nationalism to rise up and, essentially disenfranchise those enslaved peoples again. So I am very excited to finally sink my teeth into this. Like I said, it is a honker of an audiobook that I am going to be listening to. So that's part of why I've never attempted it, because it's just sort of intimidating to me, but I'm going to do that this year. That will be during Nonfiction November. So next November, basically, I will be listening to that audiobook, and yeah, I'm super excited about it. And then my last pick that I have as an ebook, but not as a physical book, is Cold Comfort Farm by Stella Gibbons. This is a book that has been on my TBR, one of the longest books on my TBR. I've had it for so long, and when I revised my definition and like solidified when my traditional cutoff was, it made the date list. I think it's from the 30s. And I'm doing it this year. I am doing it. I have heard that it is so funny. It is like a classic British satirical novel. I am confident that I'm really gonna enjoy it. And come hell or high water, this year it is getting read. We're doing it. The Cold Comfort Farm is to 2020 what the Moonstone was to 2019. Like, it is happening. I am putting it on this list, and it is happening. Okay, so that is my main list of 12 books that are on my Classics TBR, and like I said, my goal is to read at least 6 of them. I think you can tell by the tenor of how I'm talking about them. I'm hoping I'm gonna get to more than that. I am also adding a rereading project into the mix. So in March, I will be rereading The Count of Monte Cristo. I read this as a kid. I'm guessing it was an abridged version though, just based on how chunky this is. But The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas, I am reading this in March, and this is the only like known read along that I'm doing at this point. But I will have this as a month-long reading project. I will be running that through my Discord, which I mentioned earlier. The link to that is below if you would like to join. And I'm thinking probably what we'll do is set chapter targets by week. So like not every day, but more like, you know, reading X number of chapters a week. And then I'll probably have like a spoiler thread and a non-spoiler thread. I'll think through all the mechanics of that and let you guys know how that's gonna work. But this is technically a reread for me, but I read this as a kid, so it's sort of a first read. I don't know. We'll see. So I'm excited for this one though, and I think this will be a really good one to do as a read-along project because it is real chunky, so like having moral support to get through it is great. And also it's from what I remember at least, and again, I think it was an abridged version probably, but it's, you know, kind of a rollicking good time. So I think that this should be really engaging for folks. This has been one that's been very popular on BookTube the last few years in terms of classics and people enjoying getting to this one. So I think this is a good candidate for a read along. So Monte Cristo March is happening. Look for more details when we get closer to time. But yeah, this one is my big reread project of the year. And then finally, just 2 other ones that are a part of my Verrego Modern Classics series that I really would like to sprinkle in somewhere because I have read and enjoyed these authors in the past. So I'm hoping I can kind of work these in at some point. One is The Magic Toyshop by Angela Carter. Angela Carter is a favorite forever, purely on the strength of The Bloody Chamber, which is one of my all-time favorite books. I really love that one. And yeah, this one I'm gonna try to get to. Look at all the beautiful foiled cogs and machine work. I love it. And then Memento Mori by Muriel Spark. I really enjoyed The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie and a couple of other shorter works that I've read from her. So I think I'll probably enjoy this. And yeah, hoping I can work that in this year as well. So that does it for my 12 classics I want to read in 2020. With some caveats and, you know, addendums. And yeah, I am very confident I can get to 6 of these this year. I'm gonna shoot for more because I think I did a better job picking a list that I am uber excited about and chomping at the bit to get to. So yeah, wish me luck. We will check back in at the end of the year to talk about how I did and what I thought about all of these books. But yeah, for now, that will do it. So let me know below maybe some of the classics that you are planning to read this year, or if you have any thoughts about the ones that I mentioned. If you're interested in Monte Cristo March, let me know that in the comments below as well. I do expect that I'll probably do a couple of other classics read-alongs throughout the year, but I'm gonna play that more by ear, so just stay tuned for that. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all of that information listed in the description box below, and I think that will do it. I hope you guys are having an absolutely lovely day, and I will just talk to you soon. Bye.